I help women to understand that what you went through doesn't define who you are. It's just a chapter in your life. For example, if someone's been physically abused by, let's say, a man in this case, right? I tell them that it isn't your fault that you were abused. However, let's identify some of the things that put you in a situation to attract abusers. Imagine, right? Like someone comes to you and they say that you've been abused by a friend, a family member, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. You've been controlled by same types of people. And then someone comes to you and they says, you played a part in that, and here's why. And then after a conversation, you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was doing that. We look for things in people that maybe we're lacking in ourselves, or maybe that's unhealed.
Okay, welcome everyone. And today I have the absolute pleasure of introducing Terraine to you, who hosts Behind the Shades podcast. I was lucky enough to be on his show a few weeks ago. We recorded, and he's agreed to come on mine. So it's an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for joining us today, Terraine.
Thank you, Emma. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to a beautiful and thrilling conversation with you.
Yeah, because we had so much fun last time. So I've really been looking forward to it. So tell me about what you do and why you started the podcast. And I know you've got stories to share. So, yeah, tell me more.
Yeah, so absolutely. So, once again, my name is Terraine. I am the host, owner, and everything in between for the Behind the Shade show as well. Emma, I don't know if I shared this when we spoke, but actually, I work with a charity group for women who are at risk. So, who've been like abused, addiction, things like that. So, I've been doing that for the last, wow, almost, it's going to be 4 years now. I've been doing that. So I'm really proud of that because that gives me an opportunity to assist those who maybe are looking for help or maybe who don't have the resources or sometimes the will, skill, and knowledge to get through some of the struggles in their life. And one of the reasons why I started it is because I had a little bit of a struggle in my 20s. And unfortunately, I didn't have a mentor or a guiding voice at that time. So I had to learn everything on my own. But thank God for books and everything else because it could have been a more difficult journey, even though it wasn't an easy one. So that's how I got into it, and that's why I'm here today.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, we didn't talk about that. And that is, as you said, it's something that when you're, when you feel or realize that you're in a certain situation and need to find a way out, that's when it suddenly comes to light of where do I look? What do I do? I can't share this with anyone. And books are really important and getting this message out there that there are people that understand and you can talk to. So that's amazing. What do you do in this with this charity then?
Absolutely. So what I do is that they will assign. So the charity works with women here in Canada who are either they've been financially abused, physically abused, verbally, emotionally. So they're struggling in some type of capacity. So what they wanted to do is they created an organization and they've reached out to specific mentors and coaches because during the pandemic in 2021, what I did is I went back to school and I just wanted to do something different because I had a passion to help people and I was trying to figure out the best way I could that. So what I did was I took my dream, went back to school, made it a reality. And then during that process, I actually got to meet through one of the program get-togethers, the CEO of this company. So she was the person I was paired with. So once I figured it out, you know, they tell you, right? Make your best first impression, your elevator speech. So I was able to do that. They were looking for people. She remembered me. I had an interview. It went really well. And that's how I got paired with it. So what I do is I help women to understand that what you went through doesn't define who you are. It's just a chapter in your life. So for example, if someone's been physically abused by, let's say, a man in this case, right? Or an ex-husband, I tell them that it isn't your fault that you were abused. However, let's identify some of the things that put you in a situation to attract abusers. So those are the types of conversation we have. And then when we work through that, I get them back on the path to make sure that they're not repeating certain behaviors as well as they've learned from their past.
Oh, that's brilliant. Because, yeah, you often hear people say, I always attract that type, or what is it about me? I always end up with this certain type of person. And yeah, it's not because it's your fault. You just might display some types of behaviors because controlling people usually go for vulnerable people. And if you're showing that vulnerability, it's being aware of it and how to stay clear, I suppose.
I agree. And it's scary to think that, imagine, right? Like someone comes to you and they say that you've been abused by a friend, a family member, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. You've been controlled by same types of people. And then someone comes to you and they says, you played a part in that, and here's why. And then after a conversation, you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was doing that. I didn't realize that maybe as a child, because I wasn't told that I was loved and I was going to be something, as soon as I heard a man tell me, I'm beautiful, you can be the most important thing in the world, I went to that person not knowing that that's a manipulation tactic. Or you were told that you're not going to amount to anything. And then as you grew up, you came across a woman that was very dominating, controlling. So that's the cycle as a man that you attract because you always felt that you couldn't take care of yourself because you didn't have those encouraging words. So you were seeking out someone to take care of you. So it's interesting to see people's reaction when they are become aware of that, and then the enthusiasm when they begin to change some of those behaviors to make sure that they don't get those people around them again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you can recognize that behavior in yourself and that awareness can be really, really empowering. Like the first time, because I went through those stages of always attracting just men that because I'm a natural caretaker. I want to look, and I remember one partner, he suffered from epilepsy. So I was always there taking care of him. I think I missed him when he had a fit and fell once, and I will never forget the crack of his head on the pavement. But the amount of times that I saved him, even when he was in the bath, I was hyper aware of everything that was going on. I don't know how I slept or rested for those 2 years, but he had nothing to worry about because I did everything. So when I realized that that's what I was doing from the get go and I could stop that, that was really empowering for me to say, no, you're your own person, look after yourself. It really did change the way I looked at everything.
Yeah, a lot of women will naturally fall into that caregiver role, or a lot of women would believe that's the role they have to fall into. But where I would challenge the women in this case is to ask yourself, why do you want to be in that role, right? What is driving you to be in that role? So, for example, there was someone I used to date. She was much older than me at the time. I think she was about 8 years older than me. So when I was in my 30s, I was in my mid 30s at the time. She was in her early 30s, early 40s to mid 40s. And she was in that state of mind where she always felt that she had to take care of someone. So when I came into her life now, I have the good job, I have the car, I have the house. We just need to coexist with each other and grow. But because she wasn't used to that, there was friction because she was looking for something to um to correct, to resolve, to heal, right? So what some of these women do, or some of these people in general do, is they'll create the chaos. Let me break it so I can fix it, right? So what they do is that they'll create these situations subconsciously. They'll pick a fight here. They'll go out of way to here, right? Or someone's in the air chirping. Well, you know what? I think I saw him at the gas station, and he was actually there's a woman there too, so maybe he was there with her, right? So they'll break it just so they can fix it, and this is unhealthy as well. So to your point, sometimes we look for things in people that maybe we're lacking in ourselves, or maybe that's unhealed in ourselves. So yours is a good point.
Brilliant. And through all this that you were doing, is this why you started the podcast? Did it come off the back of going back to school and starting to work in that area, or why did you start your podcast?
It was actually a dream of mine. So I wanted to speak to a lot of people about some of the issues that they're going through, but I didn't know how to do it because technology is not my thing, like videography and all this other stuff. So I went to a couple of friends who were in that field of like, yeah, Terraine, we're going to do it. We're going to help you out. So I was like, okay, well, when you're thinking, okay, you know what, in a couple of weeks, like any dream that isn't yours, right? Any dream that is yours that you try to share with people that isn't yours, a couple of weeks becomes what? A couple of months becomes a year because it's not their baby. It's your baby, right? Like anyone who has children, when you're going into the world, you're so protective of your child, right? The world
Yeah.
doesn't care. It's just another kid, right? It's one
Yeah.
of, you know, tens of millions, right? But to you, it's your one and only. That was my dream. So I got into it because I wanted to help people. So what I did, because I love going to the gym at that time, I used to try to, and maybe some of the people felt uncomfortable, but I didn't care because I'm such an outgoing person. I used to be like, hey, I have a podcast. My name is Terraine. Do you want to be on it? We talk about this. Some people said yes. Some people said no. But the people that said yes, Emma, the beautiful thing about it is some of these people were, some of the women were very fit. Some of the men were very fit. But once we got underneath the surface, a lot of them got into the gym because they were bullied, because they felt unattractive, right? So to hear these stories about these people who can probably lift Honda Civics,
Yeah.
right? Who was so strong, to share that they were so weak at some point, physically, emotionally, and mentally, right? That's when I realized, okay, I have something here. And then I discovered that if you were to stick a microphone in a lot of people's faces, they all have a story to tell that we could benefit from. So that's how I got into it because I want to hear those stories because sometimes on our little island, which we call life, we think whatever we go through is unique to us. But once you expand and look above the horizon and past the lake and past the ocean, you begin to realize, okay, there's a couple of thousands of people who've gone through what I've gone through. How did they do it? How did they recover? So this is why I did it, to bring everyone together, share your stories, and let's make the world a better place.
That is beautiful. I think that's the best answer I've ever heard. That is so beautiful. And it's so true because we look up to people and admire people, don't we? And there's always something. Everybody's human. Well, I think most people are human. And we have stuff going on. And there's a reason why we get into podcasts or go into the movie industry or become a specific career, say a police officer or something. There is, as you said, a story behind everything. And our motivations to do stuff can reveal so much about us.
Yeah, like because I love movies, right? The art of storytelling is so beautiful. I love movies, I love books, right? So I read stories all the time and I watch stories all the time. And you're absolutely like, imagine if you were to get together with every single person on this earth and you just say, just tell me a story. Imagine what we would hear. Imagine what we would learn. Imagine all the biases that we would eliminate, right? Because regardless of what the person looks like, the color of their skin, their eyes, whatever, you're like, you're hungry too? You eat meat too? You like seafood too? You go to the gym too? Like, you have a family member that you can't stand that you avoid at barbecues? Like, imagine all of that, right? I think the world would be a fantastic place if we all did that.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I love that. It's so, so true. And sometimes it's just making me think because people that are shy in the world and feel like they can't talk to somebody, just that little introduction question to somebody else, you would find that you've got so much more in common with these people that you think everyone's different and I wouldn't get on with all these people. Just starting that little conversation could reveal so much that you could share with each other and stories that could benefit each other and be a tower of strength for other people, even if you feel like a bit of a loner, you can't talk to people. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I love my own company. And maybe that's a form of arrogance, right? I just love me. Every day, twice on Sunday, right? I just love me, right? But we have a unique situation where we can seek out people, right? It's not like it's like a job where you want a specific job, but it's out of reach either because of your credentials, the location, or maybe it's just the job isn't for you, meaning that the company doesn't want you as much as you want the job, right? But when it comes to people, we can say that, okay, I've had enough of myself today. I want to go out and be around people. And you can literally just get up and go and achieve that goal. You can go to a restaurant. You can go to the grocery store. You can go to a museum. You can go to an event. Like, even if you, and this is something that I really enjoyed like a couple of years ago, especially like when I used to fly a lot more than I drove on road trips, was you can just go somewhere, sit with like a bag of popcorn and just watch people, listen to their stories. What are they talking about? Right. And you can be entertained. It's like a real life movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like when you watch a movie, you can say that, okay, I want to be a character in the, there's a drama that I love. I'm like, I want to be a character in this drama. So you literally go up and see who's arguing and just interject yourself and just sit and just watch. Right. Like
yeah.
it's so easy to be entertained. And that's why sometimes when people suffer like loneliness, I get it, right? Because you just don't know if you fit in and you're having a little bit of identity crisis. Are they going to accept me? How about if I become this person? That's why like online, it could be literally anyone you want because you can craft your personality, right? You can design this avatar of yourself. But when you go into the real world, I think we spend too much time being hard on ourselves and saying that, okay, they're not going to accept me for me. But a better question should be, am I willing to be a part of that group the way I am, right? So at least that way you're putting it more so on yourself and saying that, okay, this group A isn't for me, but maybe group B is. But we get too fixated on group A because group A is cool. They're sexy.
Mm.
They're rich. They have the money. Group B, yeah, they're kind of nerdy. You know, some people are overweight. Some people are less attractive. But that might be your tribe. And that's perfectly okay because most people are average, right? So let's start doing average things with average people and we can find happiness that way.
It's quite funny because it's my birthday in a couple of months, and there's a restaurant that I want to go to. And my husband was like, no. He said, "You're not posh, Emma. I'm as common as Mac. I'm not going to that restaurant." And he says things like, "Why are you talking posh today?" And things like that. It's not you. And yet the posh restaurants, although we might want to really go to them and be part of that scene, it could be so boring. Whereas I used to love when I worked in homeless support, just going onto the streets and the stories that all the homeless had, and we could have such a laugh. And, it shows, as you said, what you dream and what you want to be part of might be so boring and brain numbing. I know I need stimulation in a group. I'm I love my own company as well. But sometimes I just need that stimulation and wild stories and laughter and fun rather than a serious conversation about the world around a dinner table, you know?
Yeah, like I've developed the ability to go to restaurants by myself. And to your point, I went to a friend and I many years ago went to a restaurant that was like posh, very upscale, right? And it was uncomfortable because at that time, that's not who I am. But that was like a world you want to be a part of sometimes. So I classify it I classify the planet and our life in three ways. It's you have the world that you're currently living in, like your everyday, right? You have a world that you are no part of, and that could be maybe abuse, drugs, things like that. And there's a world that you're not a part of that maybe you want to be, but for whatever reason's out of reach. So that's how I break down our life. But you're right because I believe most people know when they don't belong. in a place, right? And I'm basing that off of behavior, nothing else, strictly behavior. But I think sometimes what we do is where we don't belong is such a place higher than where we are. So human beings want to do what? Strive for more. So maybe we want to be boring. We want to look rich, right? You ever notice like when people go to those posh places, they wear outfits that they probably would never wear in public, right? Do you remember the days where people used to buy outfits and they would like keep the tags on them because they know they would return it the next day?
Yes.
Like, right? That's what I think of when I hear, right? It's like this isn't your world for whatever reason, right? But you would play the part. I think we all have a little bit of actors and actresses in ourselves. That's what I think.
Absolutely. I bought a gorgeous dress a couple of months ago, ready for my cruise next year. I thought it's an expensive dress. I'm going to look great. I put it on. I looked exactly the same as I do in like a £10 dress in a sale, you know? It's just me. And so I embrace it now. I love my hoodies. I love my jeans. And it doesn't matter if I'm wearing a £10 hoodie or a £100 hoodie. I still look exactly the same and act the same. It's just me.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like you know your own style. It's your body. Like you know your own style. Like my girlfriend, she'll tell me that, oh, every time we go out, it's I look like I'm always dressed up. And I told her that I don't wear jeans personally, me, right? So in my wardrobe, it's khakis or dress pants. That's all I have. So and then outside of that, I have sweatpants. So if I'm going to a restaurant, I'm not going to wear sweatpants, right? I wear
Mm.
sweatpants maybe to the grocery store, to the gym, where her style's a little bit different. She's either in jeans or cargo pants, right? So it's like two different worlds. So when she sees it, she'll be like, she's like, oh, I feel like I'm underdressed and things like that. I'm like, that's your style. And really, if it's not you, if it's not me, who cares? Right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to be fancy, if you want to be comfortable, because at the end of the day, you want to be comfortable in what you're wearing. Like, I mean, how many times do you see people out there, men and women, in the outfits that they're wearing? It's such little fabric. You know that they're not comfortable in it, but
Yes.
they were told at some point in their life that's sexy or that's how they're supposed to dress, right? So they're dressing that way, they're appearing that way, no matter how uncomfortable they feel, because you can see it in their face and you can see it on their body. But they've been conditioned to think, okay, I got to do this to get that, or I got to do this to fit in. So it's crazy how people will try to go against what their natural feeling is just because they're like, okay, I got to do this. And then to your point, right, when they put on, they're like, oh, okay.
It's like spending a few more quid will turn you into a superstar. No, it doesn't. And I remember being a young child, say 8 years old, and looking at my great grandmother. And I got upset. And my nan said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I don't want to dress like my nan when I get older. I'm going to have to wear, like, she was always looking very prim and proper and lovely." And I remember getting upset because I liked my jeans and my t-shirt even back then. And I don't know why I got upset. I don't know what had happened. But it's taken me till my 40s to realize I'm comfortable in what I wear. So I'm going to wear it no matter what people think. Like you said, if I've got to go somewhere with no dress code is no jeans, I'm not going to wear jeans, but I'm going to be comfortable when I go out. And that gives you confidence, just feeling comfortable, doesn't it? You know,
Yeah, as
random.
long as you look, I what my measuring stick, my yardstick is as long as you look comfortable and at the very least your age.
Yeah.
Right? That's the biggest thing. Like there's I remember there's like I was cracked this joke with a former friend of mine and I forget there's like five of us and we went to this restaurant And there's five of us. So me, you know how I dress, what I just shared, dress pants, khakis, wherever. And there's another friend, very similar. He had this like long coat. And there's a friend who showed up in sweatpants and like boots. It wasn't winter. There wasn't snow. Right. And then there's another friend who he showed up and he was all right. So the question got asked because at the time we're all in our late 30s and we're like, do you own a pair of casual shoes or dress shoes? Like, do you own that instead of just like runners? Like, oh no, we don't own it. And the reason why that came up, it's because so when you go to interviews, how do you dress? You can't go to a job interview in sweatpants and boots in the middle of summer, right? And a toque and a big jacket, right? You're gonna look kind of silly. So I share that because sometimes I laugh when people talk about wardrobe, and it's like there's so many styles out there, right? There's so many styles out, like for me, I love sweaters. Like fall fashion is my favorite fashion. Like I love like I'm looking at my closet right now. Like I have so many hoodies. I love it, right? So I can definitely appreciate that, but I couldn't imagine a time where um I wasn't able to coordinate properly. Maybe my teens, I was just like, when you're poor, just like whatever works. You have pink hair and orange hair. You walk around looking like a bowl of Fruit Loops, right? Because there's so many different colors, right, to your outfit. So, yeah, it's definitely funny to. I love people watch when it comes to clothing. I absolutely, it's like my thing to do.
Yeah, I love people watching. I was in Cardiff yesterday, and I remembered a time I used to go there and just sit in the city centre, just people. I love people watching and the conversations you hear, as you said. And there was a woman there, and she just had this radio, and she was just dancing in the middle of the street. It wasn't a setup like she was playing an instrument, and as you see people in the street doing, she just had a radio on and was dancing and loving life, and it was fascinating to watch.
Oh yeah, like to see someone so comfortable with themselves to do that. Like as adults, we spend so much time being serious, right? We spend so much time worrying about whatever. Am I going to pay this bill? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? We worry, 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 but we forget about that inner child inside of us, right? Like we miss that. I remember I was driving a family member to the hospital, and these two kids were running down the street, away from the cars, obviously, just running on the sidewalk, and one of them fell, right? And you can see like the adults like the children looked at each other, they started laughing, they got back up and they ran some more, right? And when I see that, that's what we need to do in life. Like when we fall from either, let's say, a difficult situation, let's say we're not comfortable with our body, let's say we're not in a good situation financially, let's say we just had a breakup, we had a divorce, we lost our job, we hate our family, we hate the entire world. How many of us get back up like those two kids and say, ha ha ha, and just keep on running, keep on going, right? Because the adults were concerned. The adults were like, oh my God, because in their mind, they're like, I've fallen, I appear hurt, who's going to help me? To the kids, they're just like, I've fallen, but I still want to have fun. Let's get back up and have some fun. So I think we're missing that in life. And if it's from people watching to sports to going to a restaurant to even there's sometimes I have a mirror in my room, like probably many people on the wall. Sometimes I'll dress up, I look at myself, I'm like, okay, I feel good today because I look good. I feel sexy, I feel hot, right? And then I'll change my
Yeah,
clothes, right? Just do
that's it.
something like that small, right? Just to make yourself feel good. So I think that is missing. So people watching, beautiful. But I think people need to get back to finding out what makes them happy and just do it. If you want to stare at people like you do, Emma, like I do, fine. I know later on today, I'm going to do just that. I'm going to go to my favorite restaurant. I'm just going to stare. That's all I'm going to
Yeah,
do.
I love it. Yeah, coffee shops are my favorite. Just sat there. I always used to take a book. I haven't done that for a while. I need to do that. That's a real peaceful thing for me to do. And for somebody who sits in front of a laptop all the time, it's important as well. And we forget that me time. I did an event last night, just off the cuff, and just invited people on Eventbrite to say, come, let's have an hour, put on your PJs if you want. We'll just talk, see where the evening takes us for an hour, sort of like the podcast, I suppose. And it was lovely and people were grateful because they weren't judged. We just talked rubbish. Sometimes it got a bit serious, but it was just generally fun. And it was seven strangers having a chat, but feeling that comfortable to share and get things off their chest and go away just feeling better about themselves. It was great.
What kind of books do you read? What's like your favorite book to read or favorite genre?
My favorite, I'm a big James Patterson fan. I like my murder thriller books. But yeah, what about you?
I read a lot of history. Like I'm bad when it comes to authors' names. I'm really bad, but history, I read a lot of history. I love that, and Greek and mythology. Well, Greek mythology specifically, but mythology in general.
I love it because I love learning new things. So that's something that I would like read about and discover. But I for me, I find that reading things like that. So you're more a learning reader than a fantasy reader?
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm more learning. Like I read like articles. I'll read history. I'll read like mythology, like the fantasy. What I do sometimes, like when I'm by myself, I'll sit back after reading something, and then I'll just put myself in that world. So like after you and I initially spoke and you shared like your story stuff like that, that's what exactly what I did. I would sit back and be like, okay, I want to be Emma today. Well, I guess the male version, I'll be I don't know the male version of the name Emma, but that's me. And I'll be okay. Maybe she went through this. Maybe she went through that. Like that's how I engage in fantasy. Like mine's an active based on what I've heard from people. Like I don't necessarily read to enjoy fantasy. I guess that's maybe why I don't like have a lot of books based on that. But the human experience, definitely. I can, okay, what would I do if I was in that situation? So that's my version of fantasy.
I love that. Yeah. And I know some people really struggle with that, but I enjoy doing that as well. And as I said, I love the murder thriller books. I'm there. I love my problem solving. So I think that's why I love it. And I'll be there and I'll be pointing out things. I went to see a guy actually. He was really high in the police in London and he went on to he's been on telly and stuff. And he says he gives his business card to everyone. And he said, any of the big cases that I'm investigating, if you can think of anything, just email me. And I thought that's amazing, this huge detective guy. And he said, because one time I shared a story about a case, and what I didn't think of that somebody just emailed me about was maybe the person was left-handed and threw it out the car, whatever it was, out the car window, and they were left-handed. And that went towards helping solve this crime. So when I read my crime and thriller books, I'm like that. Yeah, maybe he was left-handed. Maybe he was ambidextrous. No, that couldn't have been him because they were right-handed and it happened so that's what I do. I'm terrible.
No, I think that's problem solving. That's like a skill we all need. We all need to master, right? Like the way you put it, maybe I need to get into some murder thrillers. Like I'll read about the murderers, like the real ones.
Yeah.
Um, right. But in the books, the way you painted that picture, yeah. Because now I'm putting myself in that situation. Like, what if I was that cop? Right.
Yeah.
So that's how my brain will work as you're telling your story.
I think that's fantastic. What else do you like to do? Tell me more. I want to hear your stories.
Absolutely. Oh, in my in my early teens, I refound religion, and what I used to do is I used to give like talks in the church at that time, and that's where I actually developed how to speak in front of an audience. So I went from the difficulty of, let's say, speaking in front of, let's say, dozens and hundreds of people to just making sure that when you walk up those steps, you don't trip. Right? It's a different form of anxiety building up at that point. So what I learned, similar to the podcast, is when you have a message and an experience or a journey that you want to share, If you just get up there and say, my name is Terraine and I went through this and this is how I received it, some people be like, oh, yeah, yeah. Some people will just fall asleep, right? So they want some animation. They want you to connect with them. So I learned a lot about that, about like voice projection, about tone and understanding, right? And one thing I always try to do is when I speak to people is I scan. And if I see someone having like an emotional response, I'll focus on that person. I'm like, okay, I want to take that out of you. I want to bring that forward. I want everyone to experience and be aware of what you're going through at that moment in time. So that put me in a situation to learn so much more about people's body language. And it goes back to the people watching, right? You begin to
Yeah.
observe people like, okay, I can see someone is becoming upset. I can see someone is almost near tears. I can see someone's excitement. I can see someone's happiness. And that actually helped not necessarily what they say, but how their body reacts to what is being said.
Really, really important. Yeah. And I think that when we talk about communication and things like that, body language is so, so important. And when you're hiding away from the world, you're not taking that in, you're not learning that. And it's one of those skills that can tell you, it tells you so much more than words can ever say.
Yeah, there's this book that is on my reading list called The Body Keeps a Score, and it's about how your trauma shows up in your body from like stress levels to weight gain to different areas. And one of the things that the research will show you outside of this book, because I'm in the process of reading it, is that the body responds to trauma in so many different ways. So, for example, you can have a traumatic experience where you're in a car accident, right? You got hit, you some injuries. It wasn't fatal, but you thought that you were going to die just based on the impact. So what happens now? Every time you get inside a car, your body reacts, starts to tingle. You start getting nervous, anxiety, right? Or some
Yeah.
people will avoid the car. They'd rather be in the bus because it's a larger vehicle and there's more space. Or some people may, once again, the passenger seat, they may get claustrophobic. The door, everything is closing in on them because of their previous trauma. So that is something that I think is very important to understand your body. And I think that from what I developed when I used to give those talks, reading the people's body, I began to understand my body a lot differently. So another example for me personally would be when I get into a bad relationship or a relationship that I feel nervous about, I don't disregard it. Like you ever been in a bad situation and you're like, something doesn't feel right about this situation, or maybe these people, or maybe this person. And then you're like, oh, I'm just being paranoid. I've been called paranoid for the last 15 years, let me tell you, okay? And I have no drama, right? Because it's a form of protection because of the past. So that's where understanding your body in so many different ways come from. And I'm glad that I was able to see it earlier on, not only in others, but I took that skill and then turned it inward and said, okay, Terraine, pay attention to your body. What is your body telling you about this person, this situation, or this job?
Yeah, really, really important. And I think that's a skill that is beautiful. I think it's like a gift. I don't know how we develop it, whether it must be our experiences and the things that we've gone through. But I very much trust my gut and I listen to it all the time. And if it's not right, whether I go forward with it or not, I do listen to it and acknowledge what it's saying. And sometimes I'll stay clear. Sometimes, excuse me, I'll dip my toe in, but I do listen to whatever message it's trying to tell me.
Yeah, like think about it like, let's say, thousands of years ago, right? Before we could even walk upright as a species, right? Let's take it back to
Yeah.
the dinosaur age. So back when we used to be cave dwellers, well, some of us probably still are. Back when we used to live in caves, Emma, right? When we had that feeling is because what? The saber-tooth tiger was coming. The mastodon was coming, right? So imagine we use today's thinking back then. We're like, yeah, you know what? It's nothing. It would be cat food at that point, right? So that's where it developed, right? Like you have either the fight response, the freeze response, the flight response, the fawn response, right? Or the faint. Like some people just pass out. So this is how that was developed because it's ingrained in us because once we notice something isn't right, it's not to say that there is an imminent danger, but something is saying, hey, Terraine, pay attention. So when we see that now, canvas the area. Okay, what is going on? Okay, you know what? I just met this person. Is this person bad? Let me pay more attention. You ask questions. Okay, you know what? This person beats his wife. This person is abusive to his children. You're like, I don't know if I want to be around that person. Then you'll get the next person. Okay, you know what? This woman steals money and you know what? She has like three husbands at the same time. You're like, okay, something's going to hit the fan here. That's what that is. It's saying that there's either a danger incoming or there's danger on the horizon. And if you choose to ignore it, then you put yourself in a difficult situation. And I think a lot of people, Emma, to be honest with you, I think a lot of people ignore it because they don't want to like rock the boat. Like, okay,
Mm.
I'm not engaging it. Like someone once told me that because I'm not engaging it, I'm okay, but I'm okay that all these other people are. I'm like, eventually it's gonna find its way to you. Like how many people do you see on the news who get shot or stabbed? And it's not that they were the intended target, but it was someone around them, right? That does
Yeah.
happen. So that's what the body is ultimately trying to tell us.
But what do you think it is that, do you think some people, like you just said, sort of ignore it? But the feeling can be a lot stronger in some people um or not. I'm thinking, do people just ignore it so they don't have that feeling as they get older? Or do some people just not have it? Why is mine really, really strong? Whereas, say, my husband would talk to anyone or do anything. Not that he does, he's a caveman. But why why are we so different like that? Why do I trust my gut and really, really feel it when there's just like an inkling of something where other people would just go on in life not noticing anything?
Well, I would say that if you break it down, let's break it down between the two sexes, right? So when it comes to your instinct, for women's perspective, they're more susceptible to physical violence, right? Women in general are smaller than the man, less they're not as strong as a man, so there's that threat, right? A woman walks into a home, there's certain things that can happen to her that are more likely to happen to her and less likely to happen to a man. Whereas a male perspective now is that okay, there's certain things that could happen, but because of my build, my strength, or because let's say I'm more like able to defend myself, that's why there might be low, right? Which is why mostly anytime you hear about like mass shootings, what do you hear? You hear mostly men being killed because me
Mm.
man, me strong, right? At the end of the day, we're women. Women's like, oh my god, let me get the hell out of here. Let me get the kids and let's run out of here. So that's one area. Another area could be is that okay, what happened in your childhood that has these situations on your radar, right? Some people have grown up with a childhood where they were very protected by their parents. Like their parents did an A plus job. Whenever there's a sense of danger, they were the buffer between that danger and their child, right? Versus someone else may be that, okay, my parents weren't there, so I had to do it. I'm that child. My parents weren't there. So I had to face the danger head on. I had to fight the saber-tooth tiger and win because my parents were off doing whatever that they were doing, right? So that could be another thing. And another example could be that, and this is what I found in the community that you and I belong to, like the self-improvement and the mentors and stuff like that, because of what we went through, we're more aware based off our experiences and our knowledge. We know the evils of the world. We watch our murder thrillers. We read our murder thrillers.
Yeah.
We put ourselves in these fantasy situations, right? So we have shaped our mind to know that that is out there. If you were to go to someone and say that, hey, 100 plane crashes happen 100 times every year, and out of that 100 times, 75 people die. People are like, oh my God, really? You know that information. I know that information, but they don't. Right. So now that you've put that into their world, they're like, oh my God, you know what's going to happen next time they get on an airplane? They're going to be like this. Right. And all it took was one situation to tell them. So those are the three factors that I believe impact people's intuition, where some people had a really good childhood. The parents have insulated them. They were the buffer. They didn't have to see the danger till later on. So they're not conditioned. And another fact is it could be that the difference of the sexes, women are more prone to certain types of violence, so they have to be more aware of their surroundings, less than men, which is why you don't necessarily hear about men's drinks being spiked. You hear about women's drinks being spiked. If someone's being trafficked for sexual, you hear more so about the women's side, even though the men do, like boys do go through it as well. But with all that said, Emma, the problem now is, as you can in the states, you have a lot of educators and people in positions of trust abusing boys now. And one of the reasons that I believe that is happening is because they don't have the protection from the other people because they think they're men, right? So you have so now you have to, what's going to happen now is you have to spread out that protection because women know from a very young age, girls are told, okay, don't trust strangers, don't do this, don't do that, watch your drink, things like that. Boys aren't taught this. Now the education has to be taught to the boys now because the women are already aware. Right? You won't have women walking down a dark alley at midnight. A man will walk down with his chest out, get stabbed, get shot. Sad news, right? So I think those are the three reasons why you have the difference between the people when it comes to how strong their intuition is and how closely they listen to it.
That's an amazing explanation. Thank you for that. I absolutely love that. And off the back of what you said with the men, also, there's that fear of talking, whereas women tend to be better at that and sharing and reaching out. Whereas men are like, no, I'm big, I'm strong. I can't say this has happened to me. It's gonna make me appear weaker. And as we know far too well for years now, the rate of male suicide is so high. And one of those things is not speaking out. So that makes complete sense that the male population would be an easier target than women now.
Yeah, like if a man, let's say a man was abused as a boy, right? And he grows up and that abuse is still impacting him. His relationships are terrible, right? His respect for authority is terrible. These are two consequences of the childhood abuse, right? So who is he going to talk to? He couldn't talk to his parents because maybe the parents were the abusers, or maybe because abuse is usually what? It's either in the household or someone of trust, right? So it's either a family member or a care provider, right? So you have teachers, you have doctors, whomever. So who are they going to tell? They have to tell their friends. Now, in general, boys who are abused, what type of friends do they have? Not the best because they're damaged, right? So even if they were to go to these friends, they're probably going to be what? Laughed out the door or called a homophobic slur, right? That's just the reality of the situation. So now they deal with it, they deal with it, they deal with it, or better yet, they ignore it, ignore it, ignore it until it becomes too much. So they go out into the world broken, they go into the world damaged, they go into the world unhealed. Now, when they get into a relationship with let's say they're heterosexual, they get into a relationship with a woman, they can't make it work because they just don't have the capacity because they can't even make their own lives work. So you have failure after failure after failure. So some people may feel that, you know what, I can't be anything. And what's one of the number reasons of suicide for men? Inadequacy. That's why that happens. So that's why we need more groups to talk about it. There's a beautiful video I saw where there's a group of men sitting around And each of them would get into the circle and say, I have been abused. This has happened to me. And each man that surrounds them in that circle will say, I love you, one by one. Beautiful, beautiful scene, right? We need more of that. We need less shaming and more open-mindedness and understanding, because a lot of people, men and women, have been through something. And the only way to get through it is to talk to someone, because sometimes you need more than your own two shoulders.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, I see figures all the time, the statistics, and I'm quite, it's quite negative, but I look at them and I think they're all wrong. There's so much more going on for people than statistics or anything can ever show. Um, as we sort of mentioned at the beginning, we're all human, we've all had experiences, but for whatever reason, showing those experiences, which we know have helped us and made us stronger, some people just feel still that that will make them weaker. And the first step in regaining your power and getting that strength back is speaking out to somebody of trust.
Yeah, like change the mindset. Like being vulnerable is not a weakness, it's a strength, right?
Yeah.
It takes courage to say that I am hurting. Help me, right? It's cowardice to sit back in your room and be like, you know what? I'm gonna pout like I'm a 5-year-old boy who didn't get the Christmas gift that he wanted, right? Let's open up. It's okay. I have a former friend who he struggles with a lot of things, but he ignores it and he refuses. So what he does is he gets angry, he gets physically aggressive, he attacks people, right? And anyone knows that these are secondary responses. It's a secondary emotion. What's the primary one? That anger is coming out of fear. Fear for the work that he has to do to get better, or fear that he knows that he's inadequate. So it's like, okay, you're not going to reject me. I'm going to reject you. And I'm going to reject you in a violent way, in an aggressive way, right? And that's the issue with a lot of men, because men are stronger. They're more aggressive, right? Men, we play around jokingly, right? But every once in a while it gets too serious and a fight breaks out, right? So men are more inclined to do that. Like when women go through it, women do reputational damage. Oh, she's a whore. She's up with 10 guys. You know, she was trying to get with my husband. Like that's how women attack each
Yeah.
other. It's like the Mean Girls movie, right? That's how they attack. It's like Mean Girls, right?
Yeah.
Where men, it's more physical. It's like you're telling me that I need therapy. You brawl, right?
Yeah.
So it's tough to get through a lot of men because they have this macho shield that needs to be cracked, and the only way to crack it is by their supportive friends. But the problem with that, a lot of men would rather attack those friends who are looking for the best for them from a mental health perspective long term, because they don't want to confront what is the root of their issues. And a lot of times it's the choices that they make.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm loving all these conversations about when I talk to men about our the differences between men and women and how acknowledgement can really make relationships work, whether it's family members or partners, or because I know my brother, he is an absolute nightmare. Communication is crazy. Now, I've figured it out with my husband because I've been around him. I've learned his behaviors. I know when he's not right. I'm aware of not the things that he may feel inadequate about. I wouldn't make those sort of comments. He's the same with me. He wouldn't say things that would, I don't want to say offend me. It's not an offending thing, but a flippant comment that might hurt somebody when it's not intentional. We're very aware of each other. We understand each other. With my brother, I've still got a lot of figuring out to do because we don't live together. We see each other once a year. I still remember him as that little child that I looked after. I was more the mum type. And I find it very difficult to try and support him because he's one of those people that's very quiet, doesn't share. Um, I'm going to cope with all this on my own. And when he can't, he just lashes out. And you can't support because then you're putting him down if you're trying to support. But from all these conversations that I have on the podcast, it's teaching me so much as well about these different relationships and the difference between the sexes. Because we all know, like, men are from Venus, women are from Mars, or whatever it is, and we all know we're different. And learning different things in behaviors and how we cope can really, really strengthen relationships. And I'm loving that.
I think that's a very good approach, and I think that's a very sound approach. And you're right. Like, if you don't spend enough time around someone, how can you really, you know, help them in the way that maybe you want to be helped? But one question I've asked myself over the years is this: is that the help that I want to give to that person, is it the help that they want? Right? Because we can evaluate the type of help that they need, but is it the help that they want? And what you'll find a lot of times is that these people don't want to be helped for whatever the reason. But most of the time, in my experiences, from either the conversations, from what I've read and everything, is that they're not ready for the help. Right? Like for you, like you made a really good example. Like you and your husband at this point in your relationship, in your marriage, know what upsets each other for the most part and what doesn't. Right? But look at the amount of time and effort that both of you had to do to come to that point. It wasn't like it was like a 1 day thing or a 1 week thing, right? How many of us are willing to do that with our friends or acquaintances, right? In a two-way street type of way. Like, Emma, you could want and want and want with your brother, but the type of energy, time, and resources you're putting into it, is he? Because remember, the person who's suffering has to be the one who's putting in more of the time, more of the effort, more of the resources, right? And it goes back to our earlier point. A lot of women run themselves ragged trying to fix something because women will tell you what? I'm an empath. I'm a fixer. I'm a healer. I'm a caregiver. Where men, on the other hand, you know what men say? They're like, hey, Johnny, like, you're screwing up. Like, what are you doing? Like what's going on? You've gained 20 pounds. Like, you've been to the gym? Like, what are you eating? Like, we're more direct. Women,
Yeah.
you guys will massage it, right? You gotta be like, oh, my little brother, how are you? I still see you as a baby. I miss those times. Where men be like, yo, you're 40 years old. Get off of your ass. Go wash your ass.
Yeah.
Right? And let's get you going because we will point it out. And there's a place for tough love and there's a place for gentle love, right? But does the person require gentle love or tough love, right? If they're not responding to gentle love, it has to be tough love. If they don't respond to both, then it has to be at a distance love. They're not ready, right? And you have more important, you and everyone else has more important things because if we try to fix the world, here's a good example. When you're walking down the street, you see homeless people. When you're walking down the street, you see addicts. When you see walking down the street, you see people that are less fortunate than you. Imagine if you took on all those struggles. Where would you find the time, resources for your own struggle? Where would you find the
Mm,
time and resources for your own marriage, children, your family, right? Like, about addiction. How many people trauma bond in addiction?
mm,
Sharing the same struggle, right? You connect, right? There was someone I interviewed where she was an addict, and maybe you can comment on this because I know you have experience with it, where they made a rule because people trauma bond and fall in love. They're like, no sex during this program, right? Because people get caught up. Oh my God, you're struggling like me? I want to fix you. You want to fix me? I want to fix you back. This is how people get caught up, right? Because people they take on the struggles of others because it makes them feel good. Because sometimes when you're not able to fix, sometimes when you want to fix something so badly, You start assigning emotions to it that shouldn't be assigned to it, or you start assigning time and resources to it. So when someone says that, because I've been there, like I've tried to fix one of my former friends who I just shared, who's aggressive, and he started yelling, swearing, and doing everything to me. I didn't deserve
Mm.
that, but I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve him to treat me that way, but I deserved that response. And the reason why I deserved that response is because I was projecting onto him. I wanted him to understand what he was going through for him to fix it. He doesn't care. And I knew that, right? So when I got that response, I was like, okay, I can take a hint. And then I kept my distance. And then we spoke one more time after that, and he was still rude. I was like, no, that's fine. I was like, you know what? I wish you all the best. And I have the elephant is no longer in the room. Remember, the person who is struggling, they will continue to struggle. But
Mm.
what do we know about struggling that's similar to addiction? You have to hit rock bottom before you can get back up. So that's the advice I would give. But I would love to hear what you think, Emma.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you've got to want it, haven't you? And then I suppose for us who are projecting and wanting to swoop in and be a savior, that's when we have to learn the art of acceptance, which is very, very difficult. And it isn't our place. Like with my brother, is I can see his struggles, I can see his stress, and it's for me to deal with what I'm feeling. I've got to accept that he's got to be ready, and I've got to, I'm powerless. There's nothing I can do. Again, like addiction. Um, but yeah, I was thinking about it before you said it actually about the relationships in treatment. And I've been in through four rehabs and others that I've worked with, I've never seen a rehab where you can have relationships for that very reason and that trauma bond because it's so easy. As I've said with addiction, when you give up that substance, you're giving up everything. You're giving up your best friend, your lover, your support. The, you're giving up the thing that's got you through life. And now you've given that up, all those things have gone. So instead of dealing with our feelings straight away because it's so overwhelming, we can latch on to somebody else straight away who can be our lover, our friend. They can save us from the world and stop us from feeling all those really important emotions, the sadness, the shame, the guilt, the worry, everything that we've been hiding. So if we latch straight on to somebody else, we don't have to worry about that. They can provide everything that we need, but they're not. They're not providing that emotional support. They're just a distraction from everything we should be feeling. And my mum was a classic example because when my father died, she got with my stepdad and she must have been 20, 25, 26 when she got with my stepdad. And up to the point of when she passed at the age of 57, she had never spent a day on her own, but had been through three husbands because she never wanted to face her trauma.
Yeah, I know someone like that. I know a few people. It's relationship. Sorry, I wouldn't even call it a relationship. It's person after person after person. Like they won't ever give the opportunity for their bed to be cold. Like not at all, right? And the easiest way to connect to someone is what? Sex. Very easy. Open your legs, put on your pants. Okay. 10 minutes later, because it usually never lasts that long anyways. And
Uh,
right. And that's usually it. Because when it's not intimacy, it can't last that long, right? Because intimacy builds. It's before the intercourse, it's during the intercourse, and it's after the intercourse, right? When it's just sex, it is intercourse. And as I'm pulling up my pants, I'm remote starting my car. So it's warm for when I leave, right?
yeah.
And that's right. And if you hear anyone who has like casual sex or friends with benefits, they will tell you that there isn't the personal care, as I like to call it, treatment afterwards. It's you come over, how are you doing? How's your day? You get straight into the act. You may talk a little bit, he may shower, she may shower, and then you're gone. But when you're a lover, when you're a husband, when you're a wife, when you're a boyfriend, when you're a girlfriend, there's the build. Oh, honey, I can't wait until I see you after work. You're building, you're building, you're building, right? And then afterwards, you may just cuddle, watch a movie. You may read murder thrillers together and just laugh together, right? So
Yeah.
it's so much different, right? But I love that there's rules when it comes to that because trauma bond is a very, very real thing. And you're just substituting one addiction for the other at that point when you go from that addiction to the sex, because the sex, it's so easy to get caught up in and you think this is something that you want. But after a while, you're like, okay, you feel kind of empty. And now you're in another program trying to deal with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, put really well. And as you said, with sex, they don't have to, you can have those false illusions. I'm wanted, I'm sexy, I'm loved. Um, yeah, you can have all those false illusions and tell yourself that. And that's like addiction. You can tell yourself you're doing all right when you're really, really not. But you don't have to give away any of your secrets. They don't have to see your flaws. So you don't have to trust. And you can have all this false relationship when it is friends with benefits. They don't have to know the dark side of you or the side of you that you don't want anyone to know. So you can make it in your head to be anything you want it to be, but all you're doing is hiding yourself away and having these placebo um, emotions, if you like. You can make that 10 minutes into anything, the biggest love story in the world in your head, but that's all it is.
Oh yeah, you can take those 10 minutes and make it into a movie, right? And
Yeah.
right? And I get it, right? Like imagine like I'm gonna take myself. Like in my 20s, I struggled a lot with all types of relationships. With my family at the time, my romantic relationships, at work, my friends. I struggled, I struggled, I struggled. So when I was finding success and people started to pay attention, it felt good, right? But the at that time, I was at least aware enough to say that, okay, I need to understand why this is happening and understand it, right? And it's a little bit different for men because even though you're getting this attention feeling good, it's still in a lot of ways harder for men to get sex. Us men, it's a little bit different, but when someone is telling you things that you always wanted to hear growing up, when someone's telling you things that makes you feel good because up until that point, no one told you that. That is a drug within itself, right? That is a high that can't even begin to be described fully because you were told that you're ugly, short, and fat. You were told that you wouldn't be anything. Someone comes along who you think is good looking and says, "Oh, you look very pretty today." Of course, thank you. Right? And then you hear it
Yeah.
another day, right? And then the person comes up to you and says, "Hey, do you want to go out for a coffee or dinner?" Most likely you're going to say yes. Regardless of the thought should be, if he's telling this to me, how many other people is he telling it to? Right? And another thought is, why am I so easily influenced by these compliments? Right? So that is something that we skip over because it is so important to us to feel good. Because if we can't make ourselves feel good, the only other option is to go look for it outward. And I think that's where people get caught up. And maybe that's where people fall into the addiction when it comes to sex, drugs, and just toxic situations in general.
Yeah. And addiction, I've always said, and we are people who have been in addiction are master manipulators because We need our alcohol, our drugs, our whatever. And it's the same with sex. And people, master manipulators are very, very clever, and they can zone in exactly on what they think that you need. So whether it's you're looking great, whether it's, oh, you're lonely and I can be there for you, whether it's a style of life which they'll pretend that they have because they think that you'll be drawn to it. Manipulators know exactly how to get you and keep you and tell you what you need to know. And whether that's the 10 minutes or the 10 years, if somebody is just manipulating you, it's not a relationship. You're not sharing that experience together. They're just telling you what you need. And although it might give you a mini boost, it's not giving you the life boost that you need for you to be the independent, powerful person you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it takes us full circle in our conversation, right? Like when I mentioned the three different worlds, the world that you don't want to be a part of, the world that you are a part of, and the world that maybe you're aspiring to be a part of for whatever the reason. A master manipulator is the person that's a part of that world that maybe you want to be a part of. So when they enter your life, they represent everything that you want, right? From the job, from the money, from the house, from the success, from the fame, from the social standings. So if you're someone that is not comfortable in your current situation, you're willing to sacrifice everything that you currently have because you're not happy with what you have for a piece of that. The manipulator knows because, like high school graduates, there's potential victims graduating every year. So manipulators are always going to have a fresh crop of people to abuse. So that's where the due diligence comes on ourselves to, once again, what you talked about, right? Make sure you're right. Make sure you understand why this is happening. And it's very scary to stand in the mirror and ask yourself, why am I this way? Why do I think this way? Why do I behave this way? Why does this trigger me? Why am I okay with having this around? I know some people who are comfortable having people around them as friends who cheat on their partners. There's something about it that they're okay with. They may say they will never cheat and they probably never have, right? But they're okay being around it. So what does that
Mm,
mean? Does that mean that eventually they will cheat? Maybe. Do they think nothing is wrong with cheating? Maybe. Or they've been cheated on. And to them, it's
mm,
like, whatever. I know that I won't do it, but everyone I've dated has cheated on me. On my friends, they cheat. So it's nothing. It's like the person who is around like killers or
mm.
abusers. Well, you know what? I've been abused. I was able to overcome it. So, it's 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 a dime a dozen. No, it's still wrong. But we still have to figure it right, Emma?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it on the news when you see the guy next door who's been arrested for mass murder. He was always so lovely. He was quiet, but ever such a nice guy. He'd bring my bins in, you know.
Yeah, not knowing the bins have like bodies in it. Why is it so heavy and garbage just picked it up? I never understood that. But everyone knows, like, even like when someone gets arrested on the news, right? And their parents are on TV, oh my God, you're such a good child and things like that. It, that doesn't happen, right? Because by that logic, all the good people are committing all the crimes, and all the bad people are the straight A students,
Yeah.
right? Which would mean that the actual bad people are the good people, and the good people are the bad people, right? But I get it. Like no one wants to talk ill of the dead or ill of
Mm,
the criminal, right? But what happens in my observation is that people aren't willing to be honest with themselves, and that is a first step, right? Anyone that, at least for me, anyone that's willing to lie to themselves, you will never be able to trust that person because if they can lie to themselves, who knows what kind of lies they will tell you.
yeah. So very dangerous. And it can be so easy to be sucked into it all as well. So very, very easy. But Terraine, I think this has been absolutely amazing. I have enjoyed it so, so much. And there's a part of me that wants to do a killer one with you now, because I think that would be really great.
Yeah, I'm okay. I could do that. Wherever you'll take me, Emma, I'm definitely down for the journey.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, please leave us today with another one of your stories. Give us something positive for the day, for us to enjoy. The breakup Terraine. Did it break up?
Sorry, break up. Sorry, I didn't hear your question. My apologies.
Sorry, I think the internet broke up then. So please leave us with one of your stories today, something positive for everybody for their day.
Oh, absolutely, I can do that. So, a positive story because I love just being positive. Of being here with you and having this conversation. But a positive story that I want to share to everyone is this. There's someone that I work with. She is in her mid 60s and she was abused by her husband, ex-husband, many, many years ago. And she thought that she wasn't going to ever be able to find love again. So I worked with her. I got her confidence back. And now she's been in a relationship for almost 2 years and she is so happy. They're planning to eventually move in together and live. And this is someone that thought that love had an expiry. She thought that after the age of 40 you will never be able to find love again, and here she is in love, finding love, enjoying it. Not only has she found it within herself, but she's found it with someone else. So this is a story that I love to share because it shows that at any age you can find love, or as some people call it, later love. So that is what I want to leave with each and everyone, to inspire you that no matter what you're going through in your personal relationship, you can always find love within yourself and, of course, outside of yourself.
Absolutely beautiful. I love that. I love your shares. I love your style of podcast, the way that you connect with people. And you are just an absolute pleasure to talk to. And thank you for everyone. I want to give my thanks for everyone who's listening because I know that they will find it so useful and connect. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today.